And without illness or injury affecting us this week, we are back on a Monday. This is the Titus and Sergio Variety Hour podcast. I'm Sergio Paradise, and I'm joined, as always, by the king of Jinwan Stadium, Titus O'Reilly.
It looked like there needed to be a king with that castle.
Didn't it? Well, it reminded me of Cryle Castle up at Bendigo. You know, it should have a doof party or something.
It reminded me of watching Game of Thrones in that there was a castle and a massacre happening in front of it. But before we get into the China game,
we'll get to that in a minute.
It was a good weekend, actually.
It was an amazing weekend of football.
But we should thank our supporters right off the bat for bringing this podcast to you, because they're the ones that put their hard-earned behind it and enable us to do it.
And they keep coming along. We keep getting more and more each week, which is just fantastic.
And it supports not only the podcast, but also all my writing as well.
Yes.
So it means it keeps us... it goes into our whiskey budget, which we then empty really quickly.
Yeah. And of course, if we paid tax, which of course we don't because we're both owned by Google, we'd be on the highest tax rate possible.
I think we've done the Serge and Titus Foundation.
Yes.
A bit similar to Warnie's, where we keep
all the dough.
Can we get the charity exempt status, the tax exempt status? Now, so we should add also, if you want to become a supporter, if you haven't joined us already on the journey... And
the journey
to
that we're
support
taking.
our brand of podcasting,
brand of football.
You can go to the TitusO'Reilly.com and there's a supporter button there, and just follow it through. You can become an annual subscriber, or you can subscribe month by month. And for people that want to know, don't worry, you can stop at any time. It's not a Ponzi scheme.
I'll tell you, it's not a bad idea.
Actually, that's a separate thing we're about to launch.
Yeah, when you go to TitusO'Reilly.com, you'll see the supporters button and the Ponzi scheme on the drop-down menu.
That's right. Ponzi schemes are good if you're one of the early investors.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's coming in late.
Like the golden aeroplanes from many years ago.
Now, we should say that some crazy results in the last moments, and the one we have to talk about right off the bat, because
we do.
Richmond, were you watching this game live?
I did. I didn't watch most of the game. It was the old one. You see it. The Freo. They're belting Richmond. Blah blah blah. And then the Tigers have come back in the last quarter and ended up watching the last 5 minutes. And with about a minute to go, I thought, this is just going to be great. The Tigers have had the big last quarter, but they're going to fall short by a couple of points. How funny. How Richmond is that? And then when bloody Ellis kicked that goal, I've gone, they've got up. They've got out of jail. Again, which is such a Richmond thing to do.
Yeah.
And then when the ball is swept out of the centre and Lockie Neal
streams
forward. There's nobody around him.
And it's like the Red Sea parting in front of him. There's not a defender of a mile or...
and he's streamed forward and gone bang, and Mundy's 3 metres in front of his opponent.
Well, not only is he 3 metres in front of his opponent, he's leading into almost an empty forward line.
Space.
There's just this huge pocket he's leading into. It should have had like 2 or 3 defenders standing there.
Surely the Tigers, as soon as they kicked that goal, they had to get everybody behind the ball. It's junior footy stuff.
Yeah.
And I think old Damien Harwood would be pretty upset about that. But then to watch Mundy kick it, and as soon as the ball left his boot, it was going through.
Oh, as soon as he marked it, every Richmond fan just looked at each other and went,
no.
But because they kicked that goal with 21 seconds to go, so they had to last an extra 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And I think we all know lasting an extra 20 seconds can be difficult.
It's not easy at the best of times.
But actually, there's not many things you can do in 20 seconds. Like, you can't boil a kettle in 20 seconds.
No, but what you were getting at earlier, you can usually achieve in 20 seconds.
Constructive things, like lasting 20 seconds...
It's not that long a period of time.
No, it's not that long. And for them to...
And in football terms, is a ball up in the centre. You get all your players either behind the ball and the others just to sprint into the middle as soon as the ball has gone up in the air, and you just kill the contest. You get 8 blokes to jump on top of the ball. There's another 10 seconds gone. Then by the time there's another ball up, the siren goes. It's basic.
Freo just led, their players just all led out in different areas, and the Richmond players all followed them. That's the weird thing. Yeah. Like, you kind of, if any player's beyond your sort of 50-metre arc, you almost just have to let them go, take your chances, and just block up the rest of the thing. But it really was, just peak Richmond.
It was. I mean, our good friend Will Anderson has come up with the word Richmondy.
Yeah, and that was lately. The most
It's as Richmondy thing you can possibly see.
I genuinely, like, being a Melbourne supporter has its fair share of psychological warfare committed on you by the club.
Yeah.
But Richmond fans are in another level. To the point where overnight Amnesty International recognised them as a group under persecution.
that yellow stripe has now gone around the world.
You know? Just, please save a Tiger supporter.
A member of a downtrodden,
it's brutal.
Persecuted
like we come up with so many gags on the back of Richmond, but nothing we say is more painful than what the club does to its own members.
Exactly. The club,
not even close. There's nothing you can say. It's like Melbourne sport. People say to me, "Oh, at least I'm not a Melbourne supporter," or they'll say something like, "Oh, well, you lost to so." I'm like, "There's nothing you can say that hurts me more than what the club has done to me."
For so long.
And Richmond supporters know that better than anyone. They're like, you can tease a Richmond supporter and they just go, "Yeah, whatever.
Got it.
Don't care.
I know.
Doesn't affect me." Mark wrote in, "A Richmond supporter's lifespan shorter than the average person." I know the answer to this.
Yeah.
They're not. They just wish they were.
They appear to be.
Yeah, they would like them to be.
Yeah.
Steve Wixon wrote in, what's more fun, watching, this is around Collingwood losing as well, I should add, watching Collingwood lose every weekend or watching Collingwood fans tear each other to bits on social media every Monday?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, the Collingwood supporters aren't bad at that, at getting into each other, because you see someone or go on Twitter or Facebook or something and call for Bucks's head immediately, at which point another guy will join the conversation and attack that guy for attacking Bucks and go, it's side by side, we stick together, remember?
That's Eddie under a pseudonym writing that, though.
and then somebody else will come in and say, no, we've had enough. And before you know it, there's 20 blokes. And I've got to say, it's always blokes. Just attacking each other mercilessly to the point where if Bucks was reading this feed, he'd just sit back and go, got nothing to worry about.
But the Collingwood loss was kind of amazing because Stevie J had been fairly rubbish for a lot of that game. He dropped a lot.
He's been rubbish for the last month.
Yeah, I mean, he's still had 24 possessions, so I wish I was as rubbish at him as at football. Yeah. But hadn't done much, and then it was just that was another one where you go, well, that's just Collingwood in a nutshell at the moment. They're just. And especially when the Giants had two players out.
Yeah, but that Stevie J goal that won it for the Giants was just such a classic front and square, roving, running through at pace. But you see, he did not fumble. It went straight into his hands, 2 paces, banged it through. He may not be good enough for a 4-quarter game every week now, but he still has the ability to turn on a bit of magic when it's needed.
Was it you? I think it was you that was saying on Twitter that you'd never heard the piped-in music of crowd effect be so loud at Spotless Stadium.
Yeah, no, it wasn't me. I did read that, though.
I wrote something similar to that. I couldn't remember, though. You said something about that. It is amazing. I mean, they're sitting second last on the ladder now, the Pies.
I know.
Just that brings us any joy.
Just ahead of Brisbane and just below sort of Hawthorn,
It was just, for both Richmond and Collingwood supporters, they're two of the most brutal losses you've seen.
Oh, I know.
I mean, the Richmond one's next level.
Yeah. I mean...
I don't think I've seen too many worse losses than that.
It's hard to imagine a more deflating defeat than that if you're a supporter of that club. Because, if they hadn't got if Ellis hadn't even kicked that goal, and they'd had the good fight back in the last quarter, it would have been, that's Richmond.
A disappointing
loss, and
we didn't deserve
you can't play 4 quarters, you don't deserve to win.
Yeah.
But to snatch victory like you think you've done, and then have it pulled away in the last 21 seconds, is pretty tough to take, but pretty funny for the rest of us.
Darren Britt wrote in, do I have to keep barracking for the Tigers, or am I allowed to switch teams?
Now, normally, Darren would say no to this.
It'd be a big no, but should there be an amnesty
I reckon,
for Richmond fans?
I reckon there should be.
I don't know. I don't think you can.
A 6-week window.
They wouldn't want to, though.
No, it's
like my thing with Melbourne, right? if ever you're going to walk away from a club, it's been over the last 10 years. Like the Demon supporters that have stuck with the club, and I mean the people that have stayed members like yourself and myself and gone to games. Yeah. If you're ever going to drop off, it was in those 10 years.
There's been plenty of times you want to drop off.
But you kind of can't. And then sometimes I've thought, it almost happened when Melbourne merged with Hawthorn, but sometimes I thought, like, if Melbourne left, who would you go for? But you can't. It's almost impossible because you kind of hate every other team for some reason.
And it's sort of bred into you. And it's like the Stockholm syndrome. It's like when hostages start to like their hijackers or captors. They just start to warm to them.
Yeah,
and it's a bit like that. You may hate what they're doing to you, but you still can't walk away. You know? And so Darren, a 6-week amnesty is probably.
I'd love to let him off the hook, but you just can't.
I just can't let you do it.
He wouldn't do it anyway.
No. And if he did do it, he'd regret it. Because if as soon as he did it, the Tigers would start winning.
Yeah, that's right. That's the way it always works. What I enjoyed about this, we're getting onto the Adelaide game.
Oh, yeah.
And the Melbourne game. The guy last week who sent into one of the radio stations a letter slamming Simon Goodwin.
Yeah.
And then with his cut up
membership
card.
Yeah.
He looks a bit of a fool now, doesn't he?
Well, I think he was probably a bit of a fool to start with, but yeah, doesn't he now? I mean, this game, I think I'm possibly still drunk from this game on Saturday night.
Celebrating. Yeah. I thought the fog this morning in Melbourne was covered in fog, and I woke up and I thought, gee, I've watched the replay so many times I've damaged my eyes. But it turns out it was just the fog. So it was a great win for Melbourne.
Oh, yeah.
But a terrible loss for the Crows.
Yeah, they were pretty soft, the Crows. I mean, they got nearly 5 goals in front. And I must admit, I was thinking, let this not become a 70-point rout against Melbourne. But then that second half, they were just fantastic, the Melbourne. Their intensity didn't wane from the opening bounce, even though they got 5 goals behind. Their intensity was there for the whole game.
Yeah.
Which, if we'd played like that against Hawthorn the week before, we'd have beaten them by 10 goals.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is, again, the frustrating thing about Melbourne and a young team, I guess. But, gee, it was good to see over there. And Bernie Vince in his 200th, he fixed up Rory Sloane, kept him to 11.
What was interesting about Rory Sloane is he got tagged, and like having someone like a Vince's quality tag you is going to always make it hard. But you're going to be no chance if none of your teammates help out. Yeah. And the rest of Adelaide's midfield just seemed disinterested in helping him.
They did. And
they had their own problems with Jones and Viney and Clayton Oliver, and it's a pretty good midfield in that regard.
And the in the ruck, I mean, Jacobs got, I think, 70-something hit-outs, and Cam Pedersen got about 20, but Melbourne won the clearances convincingly.
But hit-outs work well if you're getting it straight to really good midfielders and all that sort of stuff. But otherwise, more often than not, it's sort of, even if it goes directly to someone, if the other side's putting that pressure on, they get tackled in 2 seconds or, the ball comes out. So it got to the point, Clayton Oliver looks like often he's roving off the opposition.
Oh, he does. And then, and I got to say, Saturday night, after he kicked that goal of the year, I sculled double when he hit that. That's what I thought. We can do no wrong now for the rest of this game.
Clayton Oliver, the thing I like about Clayton Oliver as a Melbourne supporter is it's the first time in a long time I think we might have at Melbourne a genuine footballing superstar.
Yeah.
Now, when was the last time we really had that?
Oh,
I mean, Robbie Flower.
I mean, we've had good players. You've had David Neitz.
Yeah, we've had good.
Schwartz, but a genuine,
like one of the best, top 3 maybe players. I mean, he's not. You could argue he's in the top 3 almost now.
Yeah,
but he might.
But he's definitely.
But he's on. Like he's 19. Like
he could be. Yeah, somebody on the. A player of the calibre of Dangerfield
or a Jard or a Jard, going back in the. You look at it and go, and that's for a Melbourne supporter. I thought that could.
Yeah, you're right. Robbie
I never
Flower
thought I could love
one.
again, and I never thought we'd have another star. we've
got one out.
Now we've got. Well, I love Clayton Oliver.
Yeah, okay.
I'm quite happy to say that. The Crows though just looked like they were terrible. And Sean Brennan wrote in, "Are the Crows the quickest thing to fall apart in South Australia since the South Road overpass?"
Now I like this question, but I thought I didn't really know what he was talking about.
We talked about this on the podcast. The South Road overpass was the bridge over the South Road that just
started to fall to bits.
Yeah.
It was a pedestrian and cyclist bridge, but it's the bit started to fall drop off
onto the road.
And the government, they looked into it and said, there was a basic flaw in its design.
Yeah.
I thought, gee, they've done this well, Typical South Australian,
their infrastructures.
Like the traditional home of the shallow grave.
Their midfield is a bit like their infrastructure.
Just went missing and then fell apart.
So, spot on. It has fallen apart really quickly. I mean, that North goes so badly against the Swans.
Yeah, they were never in that game.
So even so that quarter against North is unbelievable. Although this season, the season itself is drunk.
Yes.
Who knows what's going on? You can get all up and go, how good are Melbourne? And then, we'll probably lose to North next week.
Yeah, we'll probably get smashed by North. I mean, the classic thing that the AFL have always wanted, I guess, is that any team can beat any other team on any given day. And that's one of your great footballing cliches. And you generally know it's not true. That on 99 days out of 100, a Brisbane isn't going to beat a Hawthorn in the last few years. But this year, it pretty much is true.
Except for Brisbane.
Yeah. I don't know why I brought them up. But
but it's true. You used to be able to... it used to be easy. You could just set your watch for Hawthorn to win.
Yeah.
And go to sleep till September.
Yeah.
That was basically
Hawthorn
the whole thing.
and Sydney and pretty much Geelong. But even, Geelong were...
Geelong had the lowest tackles, I think, recorded in...
Yeah.
Since they started counting tackles, basically. They did not want to go near anyone. They were just getting out of the way of their opponent.
Scott was absolutely filthy about that.
Yeah.
He called it a disgraceful
but it was disgraceful.
Yeah. What's happened to them? Having said that, they'll probably come out and be fantastic this week.
I don't know. They were a bit terrible the week before. They've been terrible for ages. They don't like... look... No one likes doing tackling, but they're just not doing it at all. They're avoiding all the physical stuff, and then they're just trying to
play the fancy,
do the fancy stuff, and then wondering why it's not coming off. Yeah. And
but they won their first 4 or 5 games. They're still in the top 5.
But this is the thing that keeps coming up and it's because the sides are somewhat even.
Mm. If
you don't bring effort, you're done.
Yeah.
The consistency of effort is just not there, for a lot of these clubs.
Yeah.
And, you can't...
And Melbourne's the prime example. They're 4-4 now. Could easily be 6-2 or 7-1. But it's been that lack of effort on certain games for two quarters or a quarter, and bang, you're gone.
This could be the first year no one wins the premiership, It just would be vacant. You all didn't deserve it.
World War II, where they just don't award it to someone for 5 years.
Duncan Cook wrote in, should the Cats and the Roos consider rotating Scott brothers like you would tyres on a car? I don't know if you rotate 2 bald tyres. It's just
2 angry little small tyres.
I tell you, there's a few coaches in the league, and I feel this a bit with Hardwick and the Scott brothers a little bit too, where I'm like, if the other coach starts doing some of that coaching stuff, they don't have a plan B. There's not a secondary thing here. Kale Hanna wrote in, is it coincidence since the budget was released that Geelong hasn't won a game? Do you think there's some sort of tax break for the Cats if they can declare no wins?
The National Disability Scheme, or is there a Centrelink problem down there?
Yeah, maybe they just got wind that there's going to be drug testing in the sewer. They all got a bit nervous down there. I don't know. It's I think it might be a coincidence, but who knows?
Considering the budget was only released last Tuesday, I think you might be getting a bit ahead of yourself there.
Now, I know you're incredibly excited, and we touched on it earlier. The Chinese game, well, what a absolute triumph that was. We now have 1.4... hello to our 1.4 billion Chinese fans. Because suddenly
I think we
become obsessive about AFL.
It's fair to assume that we have, when I say we, the AFL has officially won over the Chinese nation.
I think it's the first sport going off some of what Travis Boak and David Koch said. I think it's the first sport ever played in China.
Yeah, I must admit.
The way they were talking about it.
I did laugh when Travis Boak said last week, it's great to be the first professional athletes to play in China. And I'm thinking, I had this little thing called the Olympics a few years back. And
a fairly big soccer league.
Yeah, and you've seen basketball over there. The professional sport's not... You're not the first professional sportsman.
Yeah, they have played a bit of sport. They're not... But it was interesting. They had just over 10,000 people.
Now, let me work this out. Before the game, the AFL said...
Sellout.
It's a sellout.
Mm.
And it holds 10,000.
Yeah.
So after the game, they said, there were 10,000.
Yeah.
But half the seats were empty.
Yeah.
So were there actually 20,000 seats there? But
no,
how can it be a sellout?
They've explained this, and it's a cracker of a reason, and it's going to convince anyone that was a bit worried. Gillon McLaughlin said that the empty seats were just from people getting up to get drinks and get food.
Oh, did he? Or his AFL spokesman Sean Spicer say that?
I mean, there were just whole bays that were getting up, getting food at once.
Everyone who was sitting in that castle thing, whatever that was, I mean, they were just empty. And then, as Gillen, he didn't really say that.
Yeah, he really said it.
Oh God, they wonder why we don't take them seriously.
The thing about it though is no one there looked like they were Chinese.
No, they were all expats. They all
looked like
from
white
Hong Kong
Australians.
Or Macau. Yeah.
Like that was basically it. So it didn't look like there was a huge local.
And they would have given away half the tickets to the locals,
Well, I know they shipped over. I think almost half were Port Adelaide fans on a tour that they could book. So that filled up most of it. The Suns don't have any fans, so there were no Suns fans there.
And there would have been a fair smattering of AFL officials there. They'd never miss a junket.
And it was terrible. And it was a terrible game. So
it was
the
a
idea
shocking game of football.
I mean, it was like. You know how they had the alcohol ban?
Yeah.
To me, it looked like the Suns heard about the alcohol ban and decided to get plastered before they got to the stadium.
Get on it before the game.
Before it was over. So they were just absolutely awful. It was a bizarre game. Like, I mean...
Do you reckon? Look, okay, we've now conquered China.
Yeah,
we've conquered New Zealand.
Next? Yeah, we've conquered Western Sydney,
and South Africa. We've had a crack at. Yeah. Where else can we take the game? It's Saudi Arabia. What a game over
India's got to be the next, doesn't it?
Yeah,
they love cricket, so they're going to have the right ovals.
Yeah, I'd like the idea of a game in Riyadh, where they could have like mass executions before the game.
Well, you just
play Stone the Adulterer right after Auskick.
That could be half time. That's right. Yeah. So it's we had a bunch of questions about this. Blown Magnet wrote in, if Port wanted to play in front of a Gold Coast-sized crowd, couldn't they have just gone to the Gold Coast? I don't even know if it was as big as a Gold Coast-sized crowd, to be honest. It just amazed me how the game itself was that's not going to win over anyone.
Oh, you could tell from, I reckon, 3 days before that the Gold Coast hadn't come to play. As soon as Rodney Eade started bagging it a week out, I thought, there's no way they're going to turn it on Sunday.
Because Eade wants to keep coaching, I guess. It doesn't. The team don't want him there. It seems
it's looking like old Rockets going. I'm just jacking this whole thing.
Dread Pirate Roberts wrote in, was the Power Suns game the lowest point in Chinese-Australian relations since Kevin Rudd called them rat bastards? The only thing that stopped this being a diplomatic incident is the fact that I think the Chinese are still oblivious that it occurred.
Yeah, they don't even. They really don't care.
They couldn't care.
Yeah. And the other great thing, did you see before the game where they played the Port Adelaide theme song instead of
the national anthem?
The national anthem. That was just magnificent.
Yeah. I was worried that it happened and we just didn't notice.
The only thing it did need was the guy who streaked at Eurovision in the Australian flag. That would have been
I saw that on social media. I didn't watch Eurovision because I was watching the replay of the Melbourne Adelaide game on repeat. But so there was a streaker at Eurovision.
Yeah. He dropped his pants and he's in Australian parlance, he chucked a brown eye and he was wrapped up in an Australian flag. But apparently he's not an Australian. He's a Ukrainian serial pest. they call him.
Right. So
They
couldn't import Peter Hoare?
Yeah, exactly. He's the Peter Hoare of Eastern Europe.
So hang on. We're now outsourcing our pests, getting in cheap Eastern European labour to do it.
Exactly.
Too expensive to fly old Pete over there.
Some nasty, Ukrainian come here taking our jobs. But he was wrapped in the Australian flag. That would have gone down well in China.
They would have. I wish Peter Hoare had done what he did at the soccer in China, because he wouldn't be doing anything ever again.
He would have got 40 years in a forced labour camp.
At least. Darren Broad wrote in is one advantage of "We've Got the Power to Win" being our new national anthem, that we don't have to explain what "girt" means. So true.
It is true. Nobody likes that.
God, imagine if that was our national anthem. Jack Cranston wrote in, will the Suns and Port share the 4 points despite the result due to China being a communist country?
So Jack's thinking he's gone down the socialist path.
Yeah, I think
whereas
that's right.
Everything's equal and nobody has more than anyone else.
Maybe that's what the Suns knew that, and that's why they didn't put in any effort, because that's where the motivation drops off.
They knew they were still going to share the 2 points. It's not a bad idea. It's a good suggestion.
I wonder if they'll do this again. Where it will come into is, does the AFL itself want to keep putting the money in?
Because it would... Look, one thing I did think when I was watching it yesterday is it would have cost a bomb to have done this.
Oh, yeah, it costs a lot.
Because, the AFL, they sent over their turf experts months before to lay the turf.
And the grass did look good.
The players actually said the surface was fantastic.
Yeah, it looked good.
So
and the air quality was apparently better than in Melbourne.
In Melbourne, yeah. Because you're talking about the fog here. It was pretty lame yesterday.
They had warnings about how bad it was.
So, look, I don't know. I just can't see.
What I wonder, though, this is the thing I think is more going to stop it being... Because if Port want to constantly do it...
Well, Kochi's already said this morning he's looking for new clubs to do it with.
That's the thing is, what club would want to do it, right? Now, that has to be about how much money a club can get. So, if you're a club where you're not desperate for the money, so if you're a Collingwood, Hawthorn,
West Coast,
you kind of... Why would you interrupt your season in that way? Like there's no real upside unless you truly suddenly believe that really big deals and things are going to happen from China. But most clubs are going to go, and fans are going to go, I don't want one of our home games being in China.
No.
I don't like one of our home games being in Darwin because I can't go and see it. Well, I mean technically I could, but not with the legal cases against me. So you kind of look at it and go, most fans want their home games, weirdly enough, at home.
Yeah, it's funnily why they call them home games.
So that's where I see, the Gold Coast, I think, can kind of be told they had to play because the AFL
told them to,
and they own them. Who else would go play? Well, North have already sold a couple of their games to Tassie, a few of their games. So that
but North will sell their games to anyone
because they need the money.
Yeah. But as you say, the big clubs don't need the dough. Even though Kochi's come out this morning and said, "Oh, my phone's been running, off the hook from other clubs wanting to do it next year," which is complete bullshit.
I would love if every club came out and said, journo should ring every club and say,
"What do you reckon?
Have you contacted Kochi?"
Yeah, and we'll find out that not one has.
Not one has. That'll be the example. Another thing that happened that was a big thing on the weekend was the St Kilda Carlton match.
Yep.
They got all the St Kilda players got stuck into Mark Murphy.
Pretty brutally.
Apparently.
Yeah.
And apparently it was of a personal nature.
Yeah. So the sledging of Mark Murphy, which we don't know what was said, but it must have been pretty bad.
I keep hearing rumours, but none of them I can't confirm any of them, and I've heard a few different ones.
We've heard some beauties, actually, but
some of them we've made up ourselves.
But we can't say what they are here due to legal reasons. But the Saints players, they did get stuck into him, and it obviously rubbed him the wrong way, because then when Jake Carlisle went down, Mark Murphy's got stuck into him.
Well,
and that's an easy target because it's drugs.
You've got lots of things to say to him. Yeah. The thing is, Carlisle copped a knock to the wedding tackle and went down pretty hard. Yeah. And then Murphy stood above him and yelled at him. And some of the St Kilda players said he spat on him, although it's hard to see and there's denials about the spitting bit. Yeah. But he did yell at him. It used to be in my day that if you wanted to get whacked in the nads and then yelled at, you had to pay good money. And it wasn't the sort of thing you did.
One of those.
But the difference there is
Flinders Lane establishments.
Yeah, that's right. The difference there is you needed both consent involved and a safe word. But this doesn't.
And a working credit card. Yeah.
Cash only. So anyway, all the players got in a big fight over this. They all ran in and started belting each other, and it's raised the issue of what is off limits in terms of sledging and what's
right.
So obviously it used to be in the past nothing was off limits. You go back to the 80s, 70s, even more recently, like nothing was off limits. You could say anything to anyone that you wanted, and it was what happened on the field stayed on the field. Then it started to change slightly in that racist comments
couldn't be done, and they're pretty much. I mean, you get the occasional idiot one there, but from a member of the public, not by players on the field.
A lot less, though. I can't think of many player ones. There's been a couple, but not as many.
No.
And that seems to have stopped. So, taking all the joy out of life, you can't be racist or anything anymore.
Or attack someone for their mental health issues.
Yeah, it's terrible. So, but other things are a bit more sort of, they're a grey area.
Yeah. And a lot of the personal kind of stuff is still very much on footballers' radars,
But it seems like with some players, there's lines people, and some things there's lines people don't cross, and then there seems to be others.
And the implication with this Mark Murphy one is that there is possibly a line that's been crossed and of a personal nature.
That's what a lot of people have said. This is to do with personal issues, to do with his family or something. But there's a few different rumours out there of what that could be, and that it's struck a nerve and that they've crossed the line in bringing this up. At a minimum, it doesn't look very good and it's not very nice of them. Now, there's also no necessary proof yet that they actually did say, and this is not all just conjecture, but he did overreact in a way that you wouldn't normally see Mark Murphy react. So he was obviously pretty angry about something.
Yeah.
The thing is, sledging people, I kind of think, part of me can understand that, while you're on the field, it's all fair game. But then I think, well, you can't do that at work.
Yeah, if you look at it as the football field being a workplace, you can't.
Well, this is where bullying and things like the AFL, like Paul Salmon came out this week and said how much he was bullied as a young kid at Essendon.
Yeah.
And it only takes like a lawsuit or something for this to all go away. I mean, we live in a different time, and a lot of people say, you should be able to say anything. Well, since when has anyone been able to do that? You go do that at work all day and
you can't walk up to your accountant and go, you are as weak as
you can't say to the person in sales, you just start getting, I heard you got divorced.
You are pathetic.
Yeah. Why am I even listening to you?
Yeah. You put in a couple of short ones there.
Like in a meeting, just start sledging everyone. Yeah. So that's what I think. The only time I've ever thought too, and there's another thing here, there's also just the thing of what's decent as a person. Like just because you're on footy field, there's a decency of, often when I hear someone say, political correctness gone mad, there's a part of me that goes, we can't say what we used to be able to say. But then when you usually drill into the specific incident, you go, I'm kind of glad people can't say that anymore. Because that is just horrible. Regards. Like more often than not, it actually is because it's just purely racist or sexist. And then people say, I can't say anything anymore, and go, yeah, well, you kind of can't. Like, that's kind of not because of any rules. It's kind of common human decency is there.
On a lot of scale, but there's still plenty of room, I reckon, for your offensive sledge. As long as
I think it depends
as long as there's a bit of humour. Sometimes
humour works, or sometimes if it's purely footy related, like if someone can't kick or or I can
put in a short one, or
I can understand some of that. And, you don't want it to be too soft a game, but the only time I've ever thought in a workplace too, and this comes to backfire people, is being very personal in a mean way towards someone. Really, the only place that really is acceptable in the modern day is at the Australian Olympic Committee. And if you're John Coates.
Yeah. Because they're a bag of cancer sufferer.
Yeah, in writing. That's my favourite bit. Yeah. They don't even do it. Can't even deny it. They put it in writing.
So the Olympics is a whole different ballgame. Yeah, anything goes there. Yeah.
So anyway, it's an interesting one because everyone's tiptoeing about where it was, but the reason they are is we don't know if it's true.
Yeah. And I don't know who Carlton are playing this week, but will his opponents this week go down that path.
I think the AFL at some point will step in and just go knock it off.
Yeah. Just pull your heads in.
Pull your heads in. This is a terrible look for our game.
Yeah.
This is not what we want.
There's obviously something there. It's not just your standard footy, you put in...
You mean you got so upset that it can't be nothing?
Yeah, it's obvious.
That something's happened and they know about it.
It's obviously something that more so than just your standard footy sleeves.
The only thing I could think the opposite of that, and I don't know if this is true, is sometimes if you keep going on about something, even if it's not true to someone, it just gets to them. Like, it's like that old trick people used to do to their siblings where they'd go, "Why are you upset?" And they'd go, "Oh, I'm not upset." And they'd go, "No, seriously, why are you upset?" And they go, "Yeah, you are." And you just keep doing it till they actually get upset.
Get angry, yeah.
So maybe it was like that, I don't know. But it is interesting that that's all happened, and there was big fights afterwards.
Yeah, and Mark Murphy didn't shake too many St Kilda blokes' hands.
Two players' hands, but I thought that would be a normal reaction to playing St Kilda. St Kilda haven't had a good controversy in a while. They've gone
not
from
since the dwarf igniting incident.
Well, they've gone from world's best practice.
Yeah,
really, and except for Carlisle snorting whatever, but that was. Actually, technically, he's still at Essendon.
Yeah,
it just came out on the same.
They haven't. Yeah, you're right. Because they used to be as good as it gets for your off-field.
Yeah, how many off-field things did they have?
Yeah. Oh yeah, but
the St Kilda schoolgirl incident issue that ran forever.
I'd forgotten about that one.
They had
the Nick Del Santo, Nick Rewald nude photos, gear.
The dwarf
throwing
arson.
Dwarf arson. Which saw Clint Jones banished back to the waffle.
Yeah, there's all sorts of. They were doing. And then you know what happened to them though?
What?
Then they were the world's best practice of controversies. And then Essendon went, hang on.
I'll see you and raise you.
Yeah. And then St Kilda decided, well, we can't beat this.
Yeah, you can't compete with that.
And so they just went back to being a normal club again.
Just going
But
down
the Saints
the personal
this might all be just rumour because, what some of the versions of the rumour I've heard have come from bigfooty.com.
Okay.
So you're never 100% sure. Because there's been a couple of rumours recently that I've heard that I've been sworn people have told me, or all across Melbourne, they'll say to me, have you heard this rumour? And I say, yeah, I've heard this rumour. And they go, it's absolutely true. And you go, right. And then I find out like 6 months later that it's unequivocally not true.
It's complete crap, yeah.
It's complete nonsense. And that's the one thing, just because lots of people are repeating this rumour doesn't actually mean...
the huge one for that.
It could be true, but it's just as likely to not be true, but they were repeating the rumour to him and he got jack of it,
Yeah. That's true. And
he's hearing it from everyone.
And the thing with rumours in the footy world, especially here in Melbourne, is that it generally, maybe it doesn't start, but it continues by somebody who allegedly knows somebody at a club.
Yeah.
And that's quite feasible in Melbourne. So many people do know someone kind of involved at one of the AFL clubs. So it's all like,
but you almost...
mate of mine, his brother works at the club and he swears to God this is true.
Yeah.
And it has a bit of feasibility about it because, it's quite conceivable your bloke who lives down the road does work for one of the clubs.
Yeah, that's right. So
it still doesn't make any of it true. But it makes it easier to believe it's
Sometimes
true.
they are true. Like some of the rumours come out and eventually become stories, or I know they're true. But others I've found, I've had a few big ones recently which I just had everyone say were true, and they just turned out to be completely false. And so this one I'm treating a little carefully. But obviously, it wasn't a great look. And there's going to be a lot of fines. Boy, is the AFL Christmas drink's going to be better this year.
Yeah, because that Mallow was it, in old terms, would that be an all-in? Was it an all-in? It was just about, wasn't it?
Just about. Yeah, they all got
so there'll be probably at least 6, 7, 8 players from each club.
All getting a grand or two.
Yeah, grand or two.
So it's a nice little learner.
Yeah.
Getting off football, big story that suddenly just... It has been bubbling along, but it's escalated over the last couple of days. Cricket Australia negotiating their new pay agreement with the players hasn't been going... Basically,
hasn't been going well for a while.
Basically, Cricket Australia brought in with the players years ago a revenue sharing agreement. So the players always got a percentage of whatever the revenue was. And then since then, revenue has kept increasing by quite a lot. And Cricket Australia decided, with a new head, Alistair Nicholson, the new head of the cricketers,
former Melbourne fullback,
Australian Cricketers Association, which is the player union, decided, let's have a real red-hot crack at the union and try and get rid of the revenue, just as the AFL revenue-sharing arrangement out of our contracts.
They didn't want it.
They just wanted a fixed amount, basically.
Yeah.
And the AFL fought really hard to stop the AFL Players Association getting this in.
Yeah.
So it's really come to a head. The Cricket Australia put a proposal to the players, sort of went around the union, just put it to them directly.
Yeah.
And they added a bit of a kicker and said, if you if you don't agree to this pay deal, you won't be playing for Australia.
Yeah,
that's it, career
after
over.
June 30, you won't be paid.
And you won't play.
And that's it. Yeah.
Which is, in industrial relations terms, that's a lockout.
I was about to say it's a lockout.
Which the employer can do. The employer's right within within certain situations is they can lock out the employers. They can, the employees. The employees can withhold
their labour.
And that's the strike. So that's the two sides that they can both use. Now, it's kind of often rare for the employer to go first and say, we'll just lock you out.
Especially in this situation in the national sporting team,
Yeah, and making good money, both. And the thing is, a lot of people say, well, the players are really well paid,
which they are.
But I think the
top ones are.
But for the ones that are top ones, there's also a lot of Sheffield Shield and the majority and the women players and stuff who are not getting paid that well.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I think, well, it's a revenue sharing agreement. So if the players are making a lot of money, guess who else is making a lot of money?
Big Cricket Australia.
Cricket Australia. And so Cricket Australia can't complain too much when, they're getting paid a lot of, the players are getting paid a lot, but they're also getting paid a lot, because the reverse is true. If Cricket Australia start to lose money or get a smaller revenue, the players get a smaller cut too.
Sure.
So it's a bit of an interesting one where they sort of have gone this hard this early. And sort of said this. Now, interestingly, Mitchell Stark came out and just tweeted, should be an interesting Ashes, basically, without the players.
Well, see, that's
the thing. They've gone nuclear pretty quickly.
That's what I wonder about James Sutherland's motives for doing it here. It's like playing poker and going all in on a pair of sixes. I mean, you're really hoping that the other guy's got not much, because if the players do call his bluff here in an Ashes series, they're not playing Bangladesh and New Zealand.
Right. Where you can afford to miss a few.
It's the Ashes. I mean, nobody
and Boxing Day Test and everything.
Nobody in Australia wants to see England versus Australia on Boxing Day without your Dave Warners and your Steve Smith and Mitchell Stark out there.
I never thought we'd miss Dave Warner, but he's got to be out there. But that's right. You kind of look at it and go, why would I go?
It's like going back to the Kerry Packer era, when all the players went to World Series cricket.
Because they felt they were being treated appallingly.
And Australia, they put up a test team against England for the Ashes in Australia, but it was all, B list,
B, C grade,
And you can't imagine that that's going to happen. But the players are a lot stronger and richer now, and they might just say, hey, you can get stuffed.
Yeah.
So it's a really strange move, I reckon, by Sutherland.
Well, it puts it in a thing here where they're trying to so obviously break. They've tried to break the cricketers by splitting the women off and the men off, by saying, the women are in terrible, the men aren't handing over some of their money to the women, aren't the men awful? Which is kind of like, well, hang on. If you open a new McDonald's, you don't say all the other employees at the other McDonald's have to put their wages towards the new employees.
True.
It's the employer has to come up with the money. Like, that's the way it works. Like, it doesn't
Unless you're George Columbaris.
Which everyone gets less money no matter what. But that's the way it works. Like, but Cricket Australia tried to play that trick, which I don't think anyone really bit on, and the women and the men stuck fat together. Then they tried to basically go around the union and play up to the stars to say, you get all the money anyway. What are you worried about?
But $2 million a year.
But then the players know, well, I might get $2 million, but the guys in Sheffield Shield and BBL and stuff, they're not getting that much. So then they've obviously gone, well, we've kind of played all our PR tricks, and the union and I think they thought the union would be would blink with new leadership in place.
I reckon they thought
I think they
that too.
underestimated Alistair Nicholson. And so now they've got this situation where we're on the brink of a potential strike or lockout.
Why don't they go the traditional strike-breaking road, which is, of course, get some blokes with pick handles to just go in and just start belting guys outside the fence. Well, you've seen in movies.
I think more likely they're going to go and try and get strike breakers, so they might come and ask people like you and I, do we want to play for Australia?
I'll tell you what.
Would you cross the picket line?
I would cross the picket line in a heartbeat
just to be
for
out
a baggy green.
You scab. You scab.
I might regret it if once I'm standing at the other end.
Getting belted.
Yeah, facing, England opening bowler, whoever that is these days.
You never cross a picket line.
Oh, I would for a baggy green.
Would you?
Yeah.
I might for a beer, but not for a baggy green.
Well, if you've got a baggy green, you never pay for a beer again anyway, so it's a win.
I see your logic now.
It's a win-win.
You're winning me round. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see where that goes, but they seem to have really got to... The thing I think Cricket Australia have lost a bit here is, they could have painted the players as a bit ungrateful and all that sort of stuff, but it's so obvious they just want to get the shared revenue table to go away, the shared revenue deal, part of the arrangement to go away, that they've now gone so hard so quickly. I know they won't feel it's been done that quickly, but to the average punter, and even ourselves who have been following it, it hasn't gone on that long as far as these things go on. So it doesn't look like they exhausted all possibilities and then went, we have no choice, here's a deadline.
But now they've thrown down the gauntlet with
But it looks like they're the harsh ones.
Yeah.
So the players can sit back and go, we were willing to do a deal, and these guys have been aggressive the whole way through, and here's further proof of it. And everyone kind of feels a little sorry for the players.
Exactly. The players can now say, look, when this June 30 deadline rolls around, they go, hey, it wasn't us who put up the deadline.
We were still willing to negotiate.
Yeah, well, it wasn't us.
We could have kept playing and kept negotiating in the background, and it wouldn't have hurt anyone.
Yeah.
But they've locked us all out.
Yeah. So it's a risky game, I reckon James Sutherland's playing.
They want to see if they'll blink.
How it pans out.
They want to see if they blink.
Yeah.
And, the union just have to not blink.
Yeah.
Now, one thing, rugby has become one of our favourites because they're now saying it's 3 to 6 months before they decide who they're going to get rid, which club they're going to get rid of. The Brumbies
and a month ago it was going to be within 72 hours.
Yeah. So it's gone from 72 hours to 3 to 6 months. It's like, it's like Jaeger O'Meara's knees.
Yeah, it's becoming like nobody really cares anymore.
No.
Only
the people are playing for the Rebels and the Force are the ones that are most affected by it. But the new Waratahs boss, and it's interesting because if you go off actual ability on the field, the Waratahs would be in trouble of sticking around.
Yeah, they're pretty ordinary.
So rugby union's in this situation where it's failing in its national reach.
Yep.
Its national club, the national team, the Wallabies, hasn't beaten New Zealand in the Bledisloe Cup, I think, since 2003.
Yeah.
Which means there's almost adults that have never seen a Bledisloe Cup win. And they're getting accused at the moment of being, not looking after Australian rugby, putting the interests of the South Africans and the New Zealanders up above Australian rugby. Secondly, they've been looked at as, here you are again, you've never been serious about becoming a broad-based sport.
You're out of touch.
You're out of touch. You're recruiting back to your New South Wales, Queensland roots of public schools and universities and all that. So it's good to see that the Waratahs CEO, which is the New South Wales rugby team in the Super 50 or the Super Rugby, Andrew Hoare, has come out and urged people to stand by struggling rugby, and he's declared, and this is his way of sort of, I guess, reaching out to the non-rugby people or the people who are a bit disillusioned. He says that rugby creates better people.
Is that right?
Better people than other sports, I'm assuming he's saying.
Right.
Which means he's basically saying if you play one of the other sports, you're not as good.
You're not as nice a person.
And that's telling people you're the chosen people has always won over other groups so well. Yeah. So he's 1 year into his job, and he said, rugby's pathways to education, travel, and its network of established people remains a huge selling point. He said, if you want your kids to be happy, now, not many people really care.
Who can argue with that?
I'm indifferent.
Yeah.
I want me to be happy. And, what are the kids doing to help
kids
that?
can just get back on their iPads.
So listen to this. If you want your kids to be happy and be good people, as opposed to So the alternate there is, if you want your kids to be
rugby.
Unhappy and bad people, go
Join
play
the
NRL.
NRL.
That's what he's saying. There's a higher probability of achieving that through rugby and the opportunities that come through rugby. He said, a kid could grow up and be a pretty ordinary rugby player, right? Tick.
Yeah.
But that young man might also get in with a good peer group, goes to school, gets an education, puts his head shield, mouthguard and boots in a bag, flies over to London, jumps in a lower grade footy club there, meets a guy who works in a bank, and before you know it, earning millions.
Why didn't we think of this?
Now, is that the wankiest sports quote almost ever?
That
encapsulates rugby union.
It does
to outsiders.
In so many ways. That's the sort of attitude that people like down here. you just think that hideous Melbourne club kind of born to rule. We all went to private schools. Yeah. That old school tie thing will get you through, and you might be a knob, but it's all right. Dad will get you a job in a stockbroking
It's like when
firm.
you meet someone and they're 56 and they tell you what school they went to.
Yeah.
And you in the first 5 minutes and you're like,
oh, mate,
really?
Who cares? Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, you went somewhere for 6 years 30 years ago. Good on you.
So what Andrew Hall is saying is that we need all our kids to play rugby, and it doesn't matter whether they're any good at it. We can ship them off to London, meet a bloke in a bank and earn millions.
What I love about the whole thing, right, is he's saying you play rugby union, you're going to find a good peer group. So he's basically saying poor people are rubbish. You're going to find people who are educated and smart and well off.
Yeah.
So poor people are awful. So that's his thing there. He's then saying, even if you're not good, you're going to go to school, you're going to get a great education instantly if you're a good rugby player. And then you go over to London, you go into a lower grade footy club there, right? You meet a guy who works in a bank, and then you're earning millions. So, because you just met a bloke who's rich, it's like
earning millions.
You're instantly. Like if you're friends with someone who works at a bank, so it's nepotism built into this basically. Money. Like it's
and quite possibly
you got a mate who plays rugby.
Something illegal.
Well, it's like
Ponzi schemes going on.
I'm mates with this guy I play rugby with. Come work in my bank.
Yeah,
and it's like that's. I know how that is often how the world works, but it doesn't always have great,
doesn't
outcomes.
Always, work for the best over a long period of time.
So that's his whole selling point of why someone should get into rugby.
Okay, as he said, rugby makes you a better person. Good luck with that one, Andrew.
Way to sell it. Yeah. That is, the one thing I think the AFL has done, and it's not like they've come up with it, it actually is been with the game since its earliest moments really is it's always been a classless game.
Yes.
In that everyone from you can with AFL be talking to the chairman of a big business, captains of industries, right down to whoever, and they all can talk footy, and it's not the equaling thing is the thing that makes it so popular and so good. So this sort of thing is just where rugby's falling. It's always come up short. It's never
so
wanted to be part.
Indicative of its problem.
The people running rugby don't actually really in their heart want it to be a sport that appeals to everyone, and that just tells you exactly what they're thinking.
I was just about to say that the people who run rugby union and love it, they don't want it to be inclusive.
No.
They want it to be exclusive, and it's just for them and their sort of rich, buddy, weak, bottom-lipped mates. Go to.
They're not that into poor people. Basically,
go to the King's School in Parramatta.
Yeah, and basically, you should have just said, look, if you're rich and you want to hang out with other rich people, rugby's for you.
Yeah.
You will be able to hang out with other
people. There's nothing wrong with that.
Getting on to our listeners' question. Yeah, good luck to that. It's going to really turn things around. Not Jim Shea wrote in. I'm wondering what Jim Shea thinks of
because this is not Jim Shea.
This is not Jim Shea. I'm thinking of hosting a Melbourne Premiership party and wish to know which quarter to serve the caviar in, the beluga caviar. Well, I usually just have caviar most days, so I don't really save it for. If I waited for a Melbourne Premiership,
he should see Titus the garage has got about
full of them.
10 cartons of beluga caviar waiting for it.
No, I think you might be getting ahead of yourself, but we're narrowing. It's getting close. Too long in the bush road. Are the odds shortening on the 2017 premiership just being left vacant?
Well, that was your point earlier.
Well, that was. I do keep wondering who's going to win. Like, this might be the Stephen Bradbury of seasons. You know,
we thought last year was the Stephen Bradbury of seasons.
Yeah, but I mean, I look at it and think, you know, could Hawthorn come back? Could Sydney come back? I mean, the odds say no, but
could St Kilda, could Melbourne sneak into the 8 and do a Bulldogs?
Any side that could pull together around now, from now, any side that pulls together a 6 in a row winning streak, which is going to be hard, but, you know, it just goes on a bit of is going to be...
Yeah.
You know what you need to be this year? All you need to do this year is be in the top 8.
Well,
at the end of the year. You just need, it's like a F1 Grand Prix. You need to be on the starting grid.
Top 4, and the Bulldogs proved last year that if you sneak into the 8, I mean, yeah, sure, you've got to win 4 finals in a row, but
and you get that rest now, and look at the Bulldogs seem to be allergic to the top 4. Yeah. They refuse to. They don't want to be in the top 4.
So
it is interesting because you just kind of. I think anyone who gets in the 8 when the season ends is a chance.
Yeah, well, see, you know, in years gone by, you know, the Hawthorn Geelong era kind of thing, you know, 7 or 8 games into the season like we are now, it was fairly obvious who the top 2 or 3 teams were.
Well,
now it is completely open. You could not predict the premiership.
Even more than that, the 3 teams. I remember 2 weeks ago, I had several people said in the media, and I had some people chatting to them about it, and they said to me, and I didn't completely disagree, so I'm not trying to make out I had any further insight, but quite a few people were saying there's really 3 teams this year that can win it. GWS, Adelaide, and Geelong were the 3 people were saying they're really the 3 that can win it. The rest is all. And then you suddenly look at it and go, well, Geelong have been highly questionable.
Yeah.
Adelaide have had 2
Adelaide got
terrible losses.
Torn apart on Saturday night.
You know, it looks like
with a bit of pressure.
Yeah, have they been figured out? Geelong seem to be too soft to really probably win the whole thing. And then GWS, I mean, they only just got over Collingwood, and Collingwood had a few outs. GWS are not the sure things. And so you suddenly look at it and go, well, could it be the Bulldogs? They've at least done it before and sort of, you know, they've missed out. They've had a few injuries and concerns. So if they
and they're kicking terribly. Port are playing pretty good footy.
Yeah, you kind of like you don't know, which is good.
St Kilda on their day, Melbourne on their day,
which is good.
Yeah.
Timothy Byrne-Wright's a point that comes like this. Hawthorn beat Melbourne. Melbourne then beat Adelaide. Adelaide beat Hawthorn. Does this mean Hawthorn is obviously better than Hawthorn?
Oh, Timothy, you've been thinking about this far too much.
It's like it's stuck in Inception. Just layers upon layers.
That's the sort of thing your 8-year-old will say to you.
But this is the thing you can't...
Maybe Timothy is 8 years old.
You can't pick at all who... You keep thinking, like I'm thinking... Oh, we beat Adelaide, so, you know, Melbourne beat Adelaide. That's great. You know, we must be pretty good because they're top of the ladder. And then you go, but they did lose to North last week, and North just got smashed by Sydney.
Yeah.
So in this, there are no reference points to grab hold on this year. Where you go, if you
those
beat this
kind of
side,
reference points are always a struggle. Years gone by, but this year it's
something.
It's amplified so much more.
Yeah,
this year.
It used to mean a bit. Like you used to know that. Oh, you know, if you beat Hawthorn, you're in with a real shot a few years ago. But now it's Gio wrote in. Are the Saints taking games back to New Zealand as a ploy to help sign Dustin Martin?
I like that. If for those who don't get that, remember Dusty's old man was deported back to New Zealand.
Yeah, can't come here.
So the Saints play over there.
It becomes appealing for Dusty, doesn't it?
Yeah, his old man can come into the rooms before the game. Yeah, it all kind of works.
It's the only logical reason I've heard yet of why the Saints might go back.
It's as good a reason as I've heard.
You know,
and it's as good a reason as I've heard for Dusty to go to St Kilda too.
Oh no, Dusty! If you went to St Kilda, that'd be. Like St Kilda...
He'd fit in pretty well there, actually.
What, you reckon?
Yeah, I reckon he'd fit well in there.
You're just judging a few because they got tattoos.
Yeah, I know, but he's got the best tats.
Oh,
since Swanee retired.
Well, Matt has got a question that relates to this. Has anyone who got a neck tattoo ever regretted it?
Well, I haven't regretted it.
Yours is...
My homemade one with the dotted line that says "cut here." I've never regretted that for a moment.
Have you ever wanted a tattoo?
No.
You don't have a tattoo?
No, I've got none. I always said I never really wanted one. I thought when I was younger, my mum would have got so angry if I turned up with a tattoo.
Yeah, so fear of your mum was
fear of my mum, which is probably not the image you're trying to convey with tattoos.
Tattoos, yeah. Like, I think if you don't fear your mum...
So I've never got one. It's like Mick McGuan, the Collingwood champion.
Yeah.
He's the only member of the Collingwood 1990 premiership team without a tattoo on his ankle.
Right.
And I asked him, why didn't you get one? And he looked at me like I was an idiot. He said, I don't need a picture on my foot to know that I was a premiership player.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's a very fair point.
Yeah.
And Scotty Cummings...
And he'd be one of the best known from that.
Exactly.
That team.
Scotty Cummings has got his two sons' names tattooed
a lot of people are doing that these days.
And he asked if I was going to do that, and I pointed out I don't have to look at my arm to know what their names are. You know? So,
also, you're not sold on them yet.
No, not sold on
so whether you're
the kids.
Yeah. Whether you're going to, you know.
Yeah, you might want to change the name.
Yeah, or if you just suddenly don't want to see them again, you don't want to be constantly reminded that you ran out of them.
If I adopt them out, I'd need it to be easily changed into another name.
Yeah, that's right.
Or a rose, or
it'd be weird.
A soaring eagle.
I've just never see tattoos. To me, I'm neither for nor against them really. For myself personally, it's one of those things in life. You know, sometimes there's some things in life that some things you hate, and you go, I don't want to ever. I hate doing that. I'm not doing it. Or you love, that's your hobby or whatever. And then a lot of things just fall into the. I've just never given it any thought whatsoever. For whatever reason, it's
just never crossed your radar.
It's never got a reaction out of me. It's a bit like for me, like golf. I've never really hated golf, but I've never really felt a need to go and play it.
Yeah.
Like it just sort of just is there, and other people do it, and that's fine, and I just don't care.
Well, see, when I was sort of 18, 19, nobody got tats then, whereas these days it's a lot more common. Everybody's got tats now. You know?
Everyone. I mean, you go in any
Girls
cafe, everyone's got them. There's no...
Everybody's got sleeves on the go now.
Yeah.
You know, so, tats have never... as I say, apart from my homemade one that says cut here across my neck.
Well, I'll tell you what, Andrew Hall, the CEO of the Waratahs, is not a fan.
No.
He says that's not the sort of people you want to hang around with.
No.
Oh, we should announce who won the T-shirt.
Yeah, who do you reckon?
And I think it's got to go to Gio. The Saints taking
man?
Games back to New Zealand as a ploy to help sign Dustin Martin. That is a very, very good cracker. Point. Got a few T-shirts to send out this week, so they should be hitting the mail.
Nice.
And we had a bunch of... we sent out a heap of T-shirts and mugs to people who became supporters in the last week. So thanks to everyone who's joined.
And expect, you'll get your T-shirt or your mug in the mail pretty shortly. I should have got it about
Thursday, Friday. I think they started arriving. Okay. So thank you to everyone who's become a supporter. You too can become a supporter. But we'll be back on Thursday.
We'll be back later this week. We'll be doing 2 this week. As I say, no illness to you, no injury to me. At this stage. That could well change.
The week is early. We'll see you next Thursday.